Well, hello. Welcome back to another exciting edition of Coffee with Stephen. So, this week's blog is entitled Darley and Baston. And the muse that actually created this blog is kind of interesting. So, I just recently became admitted to the practice of law in the District of Columbia. And as a requirement of that bar admission, I had to go through what's referred to as an MCLE or continuing legal education. Specifically, I had to go through a 4 hour legal ethics online program. Now, many of you are already thinking to yourself that legal ethics sounds like it's an oxymoron, and in the grand scheme of things, perhaps it is. Usually, these things are incredibly dry and not very useful, to put it bluntly. This, to give the DC Bar credit, they actually did a really, really good job in developing this program. But one of the presenters was talking about this social science case study called Darley and Baston that had taken place in the 1970s, 1975 to be specific. And he was relating it to the drive to win on the part of attorneys that sometimes creates ethical issues. But I was seeing this as a much broader contextual format. The reality is that even if there is sort of self-imposed decisions to drive us forward on something, it can actually have destructive, potentially unethical on some instances, but personally destructive blowback that can manifest if we are too focused on, success attainment, or more to the point, if we create what could best be described as punitive measures for our failure. And it immediately struck me as the way we work with weapons training and the sort of the personal goals that we have as we move towards mastery at skill at arms and advancement. This particular case study is interesting in and of itself, actually. It involved these two researchers who posed as professors and going to the Princeton Seminary School. So these were all students in 1975 that were at Princeton that were going through the seminary so that they would ultimately become pastors. And they were instructed to quickly, as a pop quiz, develop a 20-minute seminar, 20-minute sermon, I guess, on Good Samaritanism. Their grade was based both on content as well as time. They were going to have to write their sermon, then they were going to have to traverse across the Princeton campus to another location where an audience had been assembled, and they would then present or do their performance, right? Well, they knew going into it that they would be graded based on time, and every minute that they were late in starting, that was going to have a 5% reduction on their overall course grade. So they knew that there was some sort of punitive sort of Damocles hanging over their head, biblical iteration notwithstanding, that they would have to be able to get through in order to get a full credit for this presentation. Well, unbeknownst to them, on their walk across campus, there was an actor that was in the sidewalk that was suffering some level of physical extremis. They appeared to be lying there in a pool of blood after suffering some sort of catastrophic injury, and they were begging for help. All right. The question was, how many of these seminary students, these soon-to-be pastors, would sacrifice their own grade by stopping and rendering aid for this poor individual? It was, in my opinion, somewhat shocking to find out that only 7% of these soon-to-be pastors actually were willing to stop and render aid. And remember, they were writing a sermon on Good Samaritanism, all right? But, in fact, in one instance, there was an individual that actually bypassed the blood puddle so that he wouldn't get his shoes dirty. Anyways, there's all sorts of, theories as to why people have done it. And, the study itself actually has some ethical issues in the way that the study was conducted. That all being said, like in this particular blog, I've sort of tried to, take that information and that understanding of how people can actually engage in immoral or self-destructive conduct when they feel that there is some sort of punitive measure that's hanging before them. Anyways, I definitely encourage you to read the blog. I think you'll find it pretty fascinating. And as always, I want you to train constantly, train consistently, train repetitively, and train with purpose. Above all else, stay safe.